Most men think it's the flowers, the compliments, the dinners, the texts, the gestures they can check off a list. They believe love is a formula. Follow the steps, reap the reward. But women do not fall in love the way men expect. They do not fall for the performance. They fall for something men are often blind to, a signal buried so deep beneath ego, logic, and pretense that it takes an awakened mind to even recognize it. It begins not with words, but with presence, the kind of stillness that feels like safety. A woman senses it before she sees it, that sacred weight of a man who is home within himself, not a man who performs, not a man who chases, not a man who seeks approval, a man who stands in a room and owns no one but himself. That is the one who stirs something ancient in her bones. You see, a woman's heart is not seduced by the loud, it is stirred by the felt. And when a man walks through the world unaware of his own impact, when he fidgets through conversation, when he seeks validation with every joke, every compliment, every glance, she may smile, but her soul stays silent. But when a man knows how to listen, how to see, how to be, without needing to be seen, something shifts, something primal. A woman doesn't fall for a man because he tries. She falls because he understands, not her curves or her face, but her silence, her walls, her test. She throws chaos not because she wants drama, but because she wants to see if you can hold her storm without running. Most men run. They confuse emotional intensity with emotional instability. They recoil at the fire, unaware that beneath it lies the very warmth she wants to give. If you can contain it, not suppress it, contain it. Like a mountain holds the wind, like the ocean holds its storms, like a man holds space without being rattled by her fear, her doubt, her spirals of what if. She doesn't need you to fix her emotions. She needs to know they won't frighten you. Because here is the truth few men grasp. A woman falls in love when she feels seen without being judged, when her vulnerability is met with acceptance, not instruction, when her chaos is met with ground, not criticism. And that only happens in the presence of a man who has stared into his own chaos first. You cannot hold her darkness if you are terrified of your own. The man who runs from his pain, masks it with confidence, distracts it with conquest, he will never notice the exact moment a woman starts to pull away. He'll be too busy wondering what she changed, not realizing she simply felt unseen, unmet, unsafe. You think it's about being charming. She's watching how you breathe when she's anxious, how you respond when she's quiet, how you treat her when she withdraws. She's not analyzing your gifts. She's reading your energy, because women are wired to feel through signals men don't know they're sending. And when you show up full of noise but empty of self, she feels it like a tremor in the gut. So she doesn't fall for the show. She falls for the resonance, and that resonance comes not from trying to impress, but from doing the inner work most men avoid, shadow work, emotional alchemy, slaying the dragons within instead of projecting them onto others, learning to hold your own wounds like a warrior monk, calm, aware, detached from blame. Because when a man knows his worth, he doesn't broadcast it, he becomes it. And that is what she falls in love with, not a man who needs to be needed, but a man who is whole, who chooses to share that wholeness. She doesn't fall for what you say. She falls for how you make her feel in your silence. She falls when she feels safe enough to unravel. And most men never notice the thread that was hers to pull, or that it slipped quietly through their fingers the moment they tried to control her instead of witness her. And so he wonders, why did she suddenly grow cold? Why did the laughter fade into silence, the warmth turn to frost? The text slow to a trickle and then vanish like mist. He replays the moment, searching for the wrong word, the missed signal, the unspoken offense. But it was never about one moment. It was about the invisible thread of attunement that was never there to begin with. Women are emotional cartographers. They read between the syllables. They feel into every micro-expression, every shift in your voice, every pause that carries a ghost of disinterest. While men look for logic, women feel for alignment. And when she no longer feels it, even if you say all the right things, she begins to retreat, often without explanation. Not to punish, but to protect. Because here's the deeper truth. A woman falls in love with a man whose nervous system regulates hers. It's biology wrapped in mystery. Her feminine energy expands in the presence of grounded masculine calm. Her storm tests his structure, not because she's cruel, but because she's wired to seek safety in the presence of strength. Not the strength of domination, but of emotional solidity. The man who reacts defensively, who needs to win every disagreement, who turns cold when she's emotional, that man becomes a threat to her body, even if he would never lay a finger on her. because his energy contracts. It becomes unstable, and her nervous system detects it like a deer sensing a predator's breath in the grass. You can't fake safety. You can't pretend to be grounded when your own soul is screaming for validation. That's why so many women fall for men who say very little, but radiate something immovable. Stillness, gravity, a man who listens without the need to interrupt, who doesn't get flustered when she's overwhelmed, who sees past the words to the meaning beneath, who doesn't shrink when she's in pain but becomes more present. Most men can't do this, not because they're weak, but because they've never been taught. They were told to impress, to pursue, to provide, to perform. They were taught that their value lies in how much they can do for a woman, not how deeply they can feel with her. And so they mistake connection for transaction, attention for affection, sex for intimacy. But the woman who has done her own healing, she no longer buys the performance. She doesn't need to be rescued. She needs to be met. And meeting her isn't about climbing the ladder of masculinity through aggression, wealth, or status. It's about descending into yourself, confronting the boy who was told that vulnerability made him soft, holding space for the man who hides his fear behind sarcasm, behind seduction, behind silence. Because only when you've embraced your own pain can you make space for hers without shrinking. This is the root of masculine polarity, not domination, but containment, not control, but consciousness. When a man becomes aware of his internal state, when he no longer reacts but responds, something shifts in his presence. He no longer seeks to win her over. He simply is. And in that presence, her defense is lower, not because he disarms her with charm, but because he never tried to disarm her at all. He just made it safe enough for her to lay down her own armor. Do you understand how rare that is? Most women live their entire lives unseen, praised for their beauty, desired for their bodies, admired for their sweetness, but never truly witnessed, never felt as a soul. And when she meets the man who doesn't flinch at her shadows, the man who doesn't fix, doesn't flee, doesn't flirt his way around the pain, but sits in it with her, that's when she falls. Not because he gave her answers, but because he made it safe to ask the real questions. But to become that kind of man, the one who evokes devotion without demand, you must first undergo a death, the death of the false masculine, the death of the mask, the death of the boy who learned to gain approval by suppressing truth. You must peel away the need to be liked, to be chosen, to be seen as good enough. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming undefended. The man who no longer needs to posture, impress, or perform has nothing left to protect, and that is what makes him unshakable. A woman's love does not seek the strongest man in the room. It seeks the one with the strongest foundation, a man who doesn't need her to shrink so he can feel powerful, who doesn't panic when she withdraws, doesn't chase when she retreats, doesn't lash out when she cries. A man who understands that love is not won by control. It is invited through emotional clarity. You want her to open? Then become a man who doesn't fear her storm. You want her to trust you? Then stop trying to prove yourself and be yourself. This is where so many men miss the mark. They focus on tactics, what to say, when to say it, how often to text, how long to wait. They calculate, strategize, mimic confidence while inside they are full of noise. Women feel this. They don't fall for your words, they fall for your resonance. She can feel the man who carries peace within him, and she can feel the man whose peace is just a performance waiting to collapse under pressure. Because in the end, it's not about being fearless. It's about being anchored in the fear, not resisting it, not avoiding it, but breathing into it, owning it, holding it like an old friend. When you can do that, when your breath stays calm while hers trembles, she feels it in her body, not her mind, not her logic, her body. And that, more than anything, is what opens her. Safety is the true seduction. The man who owns his darkness, who has made peace with his chaos, becomes the lighthouse in a woman's storm. She will test your light, not to break you, but to believe in you, to see if your calm is real or just another illusion that disappears when she becomes too much. Because that's the question she's always asking in silence, am I too much? And if your energy flinches, even for a second, she feels it. So be the man who doesn't flinch. Be the man who doesn't flee from her fullness, emotional, wild, sacred, fierce, the man who can hold the heat of her honesty without melting into defensiveness or hiding behind detachment. When you can stand in the fire of her vulnerability and offer stillness instead of shame, you unlock a level of connection most men never touch. You enter the realm of soul recognition, where she is not just impressed by you, She is moved by you. And here is the paradox. She doesn't need you to have all the answers. She needs you to hold the space while she finds her own. That's what makes her fall. Not the gifts, not the gestures, not the games, but the grace of a man who knows who he is and therefore allows her to become who she truly is, without fear of abandonment, without fear of rejection, without fear of being too much. Because when she feels safe, she opens. And when she opens, she gives everything. And the man who can hold that, not just her body, but her being, becomes unforgettable. She won't always be able to explain it. Most women can't. They just know, somewhere in their gut, somewhere ancient. They remember the men who saw them and didn't turn away. She doesn't fall in love because of what you do. She falls because of what you don't fear. There is a quiet power in a man who doesn't rush, who lets her bloom on her own time, who doesn't poke at her petals or demand her fragrance, but simply tends to his own roots so deeply that she can't help but lean into his steadiness. That's what most men never see. They think the chase is the courtship. That effort equals entitlement. But love isn't earned through effort alone. It's felt through frequency. And a woman will only open to the man whose frequency tells her you are safe here, not just physically, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, because she has wounds too. Wounds from the boys who touched her body but never reached her soul, who praised her beauty but feared her depth, who begged for her light but rejected her shadows. She's been punished for her softness and punished for her strength, and so she built walls, elegant ones, decorated with charm and laughter, but still, walls. She doesn't need you to tear them down. She needs you to wait at the gate without banging on it, to make your own inner temple so calm, so solid, so welcoming, that her fortress no longer feels necessary. And this isn't passive. This is not weakness disguised as patience. This is the discipline of presence, the masculine restraint to not make her journey about your ego, the humility to allow her to unfold, to trust her process, to honor her fears instead of rushing to erase them. Because her love is not a prize, it's a revelation. It is not given because you demanded it. It is revealed when she feels you won't collapse beneath its weight. When she sees you don't need her to complete you, but you've made space for her anyway, not as a missing piece, but as a sacred complement to your wholeness. That's when the walls begin to lower. That's when her guard starts to tremble, because you've done the thing no one else could, not just seen her, but stayed. And every time you remain when she expects retreat, every time you breathe instead of react, every time you sit beside her silence without trying to fix it, she leans just a little more. This is how a woman loves. Not quickly, not logically, but bodily, soulfully, wordlessly, and only for the man who learns to speak in silence. So ask yourself, do you truly see her, or are you just trying to be seen? Do you hold space because you care, or because you want to earn her? Do you listen to understand, or just to wait for your turn to speak? Because the man who wants her to open must first open himself, to stillness, to uncertainty, to the trembling of his own heart. He must become intimate with discomfort. He must face the truth that love is not about control. It is about capacity. Can you contain her truth, her tears, her tests without folding? Can you remain rooted when her winds rise? Because that's what she's watching. Not your car, not your charm, not your money. She's watching how you handle her emotional weather. If you flinch, if you shame her, if you retreat, she'll never fully return. Even if she stays, part of her will begin to shut down. But if you rise like a mountain beneath her storms, if you offer stillness instead of shame, if you allow her to rage and return without punishment, that's when she begins to trust you with her soul. And that's when love begins. It's not chemistry, it's not attraction, it's not seduction, it's safety in truth. Safety that says, I will not run from your depth, I will not punish your fire, I will not require you to be small so I can feel big. She doesn't want to dominate, she wants to surrender, but only to the man who's proven he can hold her without needing to own her. And that man is rare. Be that man. But becoming that man is not a performance. It is a purification, a reckoning with the parts of yourself that seek control because they fear abandonment. A confrontation with the inner boy who still believes he must earn love by being needed instead of becoming worthy through self-possession. You see, women don't fall in love with empty confidence. They fall in love with embodied certainty, not the kind that boasts, but the kind that radiates, that says, I know who I am, and I won't lose that trying to keep you. This is the paradox of masculine magnetism, the more you need her, the less safe she feels. But the more you honor yourself, the more she gravitates toward you. Not because you push her away, but because your wholeness invites her into freedom, not fusion. And freedom is what her soul truly longs for. Not freedom from you, but freedom within you. Can she cry without being told to calm down? Can she rage without being feared? Can she doubt without being dismissed? Can she feel without being fixed? These are the real questions, the ones that determine whether she blossoms or withers in your presence. Because love is not created through intensity, but safety. The kind of safety that allows her to unravel without losing her dignity. And here's what so many men never grasp. If you shame her for her sensitivity, you don't deserve her surrender. If you shrink from her emotion, you are not ready for her intimacy. If you demand her trust before you've earned her nervous system's peace, you are not in love, you are in possession. True masculine power doesn't dominate, it guides, it grounds, it listens, and most of all, it remains. Women have known abandonment in 1,000 unspoken forms, not just in being left, but in being emotionally evacuated, in being touched but not felt, heard but not understood, desired but never held. And so she scans for presence like a heartbeat, because she knows that without it, even the strongest hands can't hold her. And when she finds it, that presence, that immovable center of a man, she begins to soften. Not because he demanded it, but because his very existence whispers, you don't have to be on guard anymore. That's what makes her fall. Not into infatuation, not into fantasy, but into truth. A truth that says, here is a man who can meet me in all my fullness and stay. Here is a man who doesn't need me to dim my light to protect his ego, who doesn't recoil from my shadows because he's made peace with his own, who doesn't treat my love like a currency to be earned, but like a sacred flame to be honored. That man is not common. That man is not found in every mirror. That man is forged in solitude, in honesty, in the crucible of self-examination, in the silence of nights where you choose growth over distraction, awareness over ego, and wholeness over performance. Because only when you have sat with your own pain, without numbing, without fleeing, will you be able to sit with hers. Only when you've held your own inner child, trembling, angry, confused, will you be able to hold her without trying to fix or escape. And when you can do that, truly do that, she will feel it before you ever say a word. Because a woman knows. She always knows. She doesn't need proof. She feels the proof in your presence. And she responds not with logic, not with reason, but with openness, with trust, with the kind of love that does not need to be bought, begged for, or performed into existence. Because it's not a reaction to your actions, it's a reflection of your energy. You want her heart? Then become the man whose energy makes her soul exhale. And when she exhales, not because she's impressed, but because she finally feels safe, that is when love, real love, begins to rise. It rises not in the rush of romance, but in the quiet moments where her nervous system relaxes in your presence, where her eyes soften, where her breath deepens, where her guard, built from years of betrayal and misunderstanding, begins to dissolve, not through pressure, not through persuasion, but through peace. This is what most men never see, because they're chasing the response. The laugh, the kiss, the affection, without realizing the source of it all, lies in the unspoken, in the way you walk into a room, in the way you listen when she doubts herself, in the way you stay when her emotions become too much for lesser men. She falls in love when she no longer needs to pretend, when she doesn't have to package her needs in politeness, when she can be fierce, fragile, radiant, and raw, and know that your energy will not punish her for it, because she doesn't want a savior, she wants a sanctuary, a place where her soul is not just allowed but invited, where her depth is not feared but revered, where her power is not challenged but cherished, because you are rooted enough in yourself to stand beside it, not beneath it. And for that you must do what most men fear, face yourself. Strip away every borrowed identity. Dismantle the armor of performance. Enter the furnace of your own emotional truth, and stay long enough to burn away everything that is not real. That is the path, not to becoming irresistible, but to becoming undeniable. Because the man who knows who he is, who is no longer seduced by applause or destroyed by silence, becomes a mirror in which a woman sees herself clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, she loves not just you, but the version of herself you allow her to be. You want to know the secret? It's not mystery, not mastery, not manipulation. It's emotional depth. It's presence so unwavering that she can fall apart and know you won't disappear. It's strength that doesn't speak over her but surrounds her. It's silence that doesn't punish but listens. It's knowing that the true measure of a man is not in how many women he can attract, but how much safety his presence creates when the performance ends. Because women don't fall in love with appearances. They fall in love with atmospheres, with what it feels like to exist in your orbit, with what awakens inside them when they're near you. So if you want her to fall, don't try to impress her. Become the man who makes her feel seen, the man who makes her feel safe, the man who never needed her to be small because his power was never threatened by her light, the man who has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to fear, because that man, he doesn't beg, he doesn't chase, he doesn't pretend, he simply chooses. And that is the final truth. The man who knows his worth doesn't chase, he chooses.